All of you have probably done a picture puzzle in your lives. How many of you still are doing picture puzzles? Hold up your hands. Not so many. I mean, that's too bad, because those that are doing it, because picture puzzles are a real key, I think, to thinking about the future. But many people try to get the picture of the future by taking the pieces that eventually make up the pictures, by taking the pieces and lining them up sequentially. That doesn't work. But notice that everyone got trapped by the sequence, I think sequence is the enemy of making connections, of making real connections, but we're taught history in sequence. It didn't happen in sequence. It happened as a great jumble of interplay of forces and considerations of all kinds. But for convenience, we teach it in sequence. Now, the future, therefore, is not in sequence, and we cannot anticipate it by trying to work out a sequence in that direction. My book, Mindset, is about mindsets, and then also I have some of the pictures of the future that I've created by using those mindsets. And one of them is that a visual culture is taking over the world. And in getting that picture, as this process suggests, as the picture puzzle process suggests, I found pieces that suggested that we're moving toward the visual and away from the word, and found other pieces that fit together, and more pieces that fit together, and pretty soon I had a picture. And if pictures didn't fit, and they didn't fit with anything else, of course there are blips on the screen and one throws them away. But let me just mention some of those pieces that I picked up to form that picture, and there are many more pieces, because this is an extraordinary shift to a visual culture. The first piece probably was not necessarily the slow death of newspapers, but the slow death of newspaper culture. For many more years, here and elsewhere, the newspaper, the news in the newspaper was at the core of our societies. That's where we found out what was going on, and that was the basis of what we talked about. Well, that's certainly receding. That's certainly going away. Advertising. I remember in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s that copy, the written word, was the thing in advertising. Beautiful essays about products and services. And now that's shifted to the picture narrative. Most ads are now visual, and many don't even have any words. And you look at commercials on television, often very few words. It's all the visual, and it's the picture narrative. And that sort of goes back to the cave drawings, which were themselves picture narratives. We have also upscale design today. Very elegant design of even common products all around us. Architecture has become a visual art. Frank Gehry was a very important player here with his Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao in Spain, and the extraordinary beauty of that architecture. The building just the next block is another example of architecture as visual art. It's all over the world. I think indeed that today the most important visual art is architecture. And then we've seen increasingly the integration of fashion and art and architecture, a blending of those, and a blending of the internet and videos and film and all of these visual stimuli. Photography, which is obviously totally visual, photography has become a high art with great prices being paid. It's visual in the mix. It is not that we have the word and that's going away, and now we're having visual. It's in the mix. There's much more. The visual is coming up, and the word is going down. Well, in thinking about the world as a picture puzzle, where do we find the pieces? And that's another mindset that I have, that the future is embedded in the present. The future is all around us today. We're living with the future. The future is with us always. And we just have to identify those pieces that will mature and connect with other pieces and become the future and become the pictures of the future. And many of these pieces of the future are found in newspapers. Newspapers, the first draft of history, or at least the first rough draft of history. And often you get the very first glimpses of the future by some reports of some event or some happening, not opinion. Think about newspapers as primary source today. Look at newspapers as if they're 100 years old, and you can really quite easily sort out what's important and what isn't. So in the stream of time, the future is always with us. Now, does that mean that everything is changing? No. Another of the mindsets is, while many things change, most things remain constant. How often have we heard, the only certainty is change? Or in business, our only constant is change. It's just not true. Most things remain constant. But the currency of the media is change. The currency of the media is something different that's happened. So that's all they report on. Usually it's bad news. But change, we have to be very discerning about this, because that's what they feed us all the time, and it's as if everything in the world is changing. And that's really not the case, but it is the hype of the day. In this, my mindset is we have to focus on the score of the game. How do you read newspapers? I always read newspapers back to front. I read them back to front because most newspapers have sports in the back, and I really love the sports and love to get the results and all of that. The scores of the games are totally reliable. When I read last summer that Italy in the World Cup, Italy beat France 5-3, I had 100% confidence that actually occurred. The best paper in the world is the Financial Times. Again, I want to emphasize it's not about opinions. It's not the opinions of the newspapers. It's the reporting of events. I want to know what really took place. I want to see if some of the things that really took place are new pieces of the picture puzzle of the future, with sports scores as my standard